And I want to start with this because it leads into our poem, The Slaughter. This photograph was taken in 1988 at the conclusion of, in Nanjing. This is over the big lake in the center of the city of Nanjing in 1988 again. I had met, again, and the preface, of course, of this book is also by Liu Xiaobo, who, as some of you may know, he died almost a year ago on June the 13th after contracting cancer while imprisoned in China. Liu Xiaobo was a friend of mine who I met in 1986. And this leads up to where we're going. Yes. I promise. I met him in 1986 through another friend of mine. And later on, in 1987, when I wasn't living in Beijing at the time, but I was in 1987, I spent more time with Liu Xiaobo then. And he gave me, at the time, after there was a series of demonstrations, pro-democracy demonstrations in 1986, and the end of 1986 and the beginning of 1987, that were repressed in the new year in 1987, and led to the forced resignation of the Communist Party Secretary General at the time, Hu Yaobang. And there were a few literary works picked out supposedly by Deng Xiaoping, then the titular leader of China, as examples of bourgeois trash and things like that, and black negative thought. One of them was a poem written by Liao Yiwu called The City of Death. But what happened was after Liao Yiwu had this poem published in the most prominent literary journal in China at the time, which was People's Literature, Renmin Wenxue, in a combined January and February issue, which led to the issue being pulled off the stands, and Liao Yiwu was pulled out of his work as well. He was an editor for a small regional publishing house in Sichuan. And, however, Liao, being told he could not publish anymore and was not allowed to take part in any official gatherings for poets, he went about putting together an underground poetry journal, as one does, right? Even though one is told specifically you're not allowed to do such things. So he was ready to publish 3,000 copies of it. It was in the printers, ready to go, and the police came in and grabbed it just before it was about to be issued. It had already been printed. So they grabbed it all and destroyed them all. And Liao got a copy of the original print, and he managed to photocopy it. So he made about 100 photocopies, and he sent them out to various people he knew, including one, Liu Xiaobo, who then looked through it and said, in one of our meetings, as I biked up to his place in Beijing, and he said, "Here, you might be interested in this." So I looked at it, I read it. I knew Liao Yiwu from the poem that had been banned, The City of Death, and he had written. There was another. It was a first of 3 poems, and there was a second of the trilogy was published in this journal that never saw the light of day. So I wrote him a letter, and I said, I'd like to come and meet you. And he said, come on down. And so in 1987, I went to visit with Liao Yiwu. Okay, so this is a long way. So Liu Xiaobo and Liao Yiwu and I were sort of together in all of this from the beginning, how we met. Liu Xiaobo at that time had not met Liao Yiwu, but he was well known, and he had written some poetry as well, and so Liao Yiwu had sent Liu Xiaobo the journal that we talked about. He didn't really meet him until after June the 4th, right? Okay, so what happened in 1988, leading up to this photograph, there was another thaw as the new Secretary General had taken over, his name Zhao Ziyang. After 6 months, 9 months of a crackdown on the cultural sphere in China, things began to loosen up again. And it began to loosen up so much that in 1988, some people in some official poetry journals, in fact, the #1 poetry journal in China called Poetry, original name, but the calligraphy was Mao's, so you can't change that name. Anyway, but we had friends who worked there, and they managed to get us invited. Liao was invited, and a few other poets from Sichuan, and I was half invited. In that I was invited to come, but they didn't want me to talk. So they were happy to have me in their pictures, but not to have me saying anything, which was fine, okay. Anyway, so we were there, and we got into all kinds of wonderful trouble and drank too much. And but anyway, we got through like 2 weeks of wandering around with a bunch of poets in China, official and unofficial ones. And at the end of it, we ended up in Nanjing, where I lived for a year previously. And I was showing Liao Yiwu around town, and for certain things like this large, at least at the time, it was a very tall hotel, 30 stories high, with a revolving restaurant on top, with the highest building in the rest of Nanjing at most 8 floors. Yes, so it was a huge phallic symbol in the middle of Nanjing. And inside it, of course, they had lots of shops for foreigners only, or people who had access to. They used to have 2 kinds of currencies in China for foreigners, or people who had access to foreign currency. They had this special 兑换券 that was only convertible currency, and the rest of the people had normal people's currency, which could not be used in these shops, right? So I took him through, and he saw these things, and they don't have anything like that in Fuling. They didn't at the time where Liao Yiwu came from, or in Chengdu. They did later, but he wasn't living there anymore. Anyway, in any case, so what happened was an inspiration to write a poem called Slaughter, as a part, with the 3rd part of a 2nd trilogy that he was writing after the City of Death one. And the Slaughter was more of a metaphysical and commercial consumerism about materialism, etc., and so on. So the first 2 parts of that poem were written during 1989, and the early months of '89, and Liao Yiwu hit a writer's block. Yes. And then he didn't, and that was June the 4th. I had left Beijing on I arrived in Fuling with him on June the 1st, after being in Beijing, and part of what was going on there for a month before I left. And anyway, I traveled there with my shortwave radio and listening to live reports of what was happening on the BBC World Service. And at the time, they had radio trucks or radio jeeps, radio-equipped jeeps in different locations in Beijing, and they were broadcasting live all through the night on June the 3rd, when the troops started to come in, and through June the 4th. Amazingly, of course, I've contacted the BBC since. They trashed all those recordings. They have no archives left of the live reports they had on the World Service at the time, which is very interesting. They were very interested by it too, but they said, really? Oh, someone trashed them somewhere. Anyway, but what happened is I was translating, and Liao Yiwu was listening to the scream. You could hear the screams and the gunshots and other descriptions that I gave and translated to him of tanks, etc., and so on. And that provided the inspiration for parts 3 and 4, the conclusion of Slaughter. I translated it as Slaughter. The only reason it appears as Massacre is that the editors of that book, which I didn't translate, thought it was a good idea for reasons that have nothing to do with poetry. But anyway, I choose Slaughter for poetic reasons, and you'll hear it in a minute. But okay, so now we're going to read Slaughter. So in fact, right? So, no. A quick word on this. I'm going to read the whole thing in its entirety, and Liao Yiwu will interject and do Liao Yiwu things while I'm reading it in English. Okay. Okay. So 好吧，来。
我抗议！
我抗
议！
我抗议！
我抗议！
And another sort of slaughter takes place at Utopia's core. The Prime Minister catches cold, the people must cough. Martial law declared again and again. The toothless machinery of the state rolls towards those who have the courage to resist the sickness. Unarmed thugs fall by the thousands. Ironclad professional killers swim in a sea of blood. Set fires beneath tightly closed windows. Wipe their army regulation boots with the skirts of dead maidens. They're incapable of trembling. These heartless robots are incapable of trembling. Their electronic brains possess only one program, an official document full of holes. In the name of the fatherland, slaughter the Constitution. Replace the Constitution, slaughter righteousness. In the name of mothers, throttle children. In the name of children, sodomize fathers. In the name of wives, murder husbands. In the name of airlines, blow up cities. Open fire, fire! Upon the elderly, upon the children. Open fire on women, on students, workers, teachers. Open fire on peddlers. Open fire, blast away. Take aim at those angry faces, horrified faces, convulsing faces. Empty all barrels on despairing, peaceful faces. Fire away to your heart's content. These faces that come on the tide, and in the same moment I dead, are so beautiful. These faces that will be going up to heaven and down to hell are so beautiful. Beautiful, a beauty that turns men into strange beasts. A beauty that lures men on to ravage, nullify, possess, despoil. Do away with all beauty. Do away with all flowers, forests, campuses, love, guitars, and dreams. Do air. Do away with those ideas that enter into air. Open fire, blast away, it feels so good. Just like a smoking a joint, going to the toilet, back on the base, giving your good old lady a good old fuck. Open fire! Open fire! Blast away! Feels good, so good! Make the grain gush out, the soul gush out, gush on the overpass, the gateway house, railings, splash on the road, flash towards the sky where they become stars. Escape stars! Stars with two human legs! Sky earthlings of reverse precision! One time wearing shiny hats! Bright shiny metal helmets! A troop of soldiers come charging over the moon! Open fire! Fire! Blast away! Feels so good! Mankind and stars fall! Freeze together! Time to fly out from the other! Chase them up to the clouds! Chase into the cracks of the earth and into their flesh and waste them. Blow another hole in the soul. Blow another hole in the stars. Souls dressed in red shirts. Souls with white blood. Souls wearing wedding shoes, doing gymnastics to radio. Where can you run to? We will dig you out of the mud, tear you out of the flesh, scoop you out of the air and water. Open fire, blast away. It feels so good, good. The slaughter takes place in three worlds. On the wings of birds, in the stomachs of fish, running about in the fine dust, in countless living organisms. Fly, run. Freedom feels so good. Nothing else freedom feels so good. Power will be a triumph and forever. We pass on from generation to generation forever. Freedom will also come back from the dead. It will come back to life in generation after generation. Like that dim light just before dawn. No, there's no light. At Utopia's core, there can never be light. Our hearts are black. Black and golden, like a corpse of fire, a trace of the thousands of the burned dead. You will exist. Children, your body goes cold. Children, your hands go. Let's go home. Brothers and sisters, your shattered bodies littering the earth. Let's go home. We walk noiselessly, walk 3 feet above the ground, all the time forward. There must be a place to rest. There must be a place where fires of gunpowder explosions cannot be heard. We so wish to hide within a stalk of grass, or eat, uncle, auntie, grandpa, granny, daddy, mommy. How much further to our home? We have no home, everybody knows. Chinese people have no home. Home is a comforting desire. Let us die in this desire. Open fire! Blast away fire! Let us die in freedom, righteousness, equality, universal love, peace, these vague desires. Stand on the horizon, attract more of the living to death. It rains. Don't move, rain of transparent ashes. Run quickly, mummy. Run quickly, son. Run quickly, little brother. Run quickly, little brother. The butchers will not let up. And you more terrifying day is approaching. Open fire, blast away, fire. The king throws dogs, steals, cry, 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 cry. While you still have not been surrounded and annihilated, while you still have strength left to suck milk, cry, cry, cry. Let your sobs cast you off, fuse into radio, television, radar, give repeated testimony of the slaughter. Let your sobs cast you off, fuse into plant life, semi-vegetable life, and microorganisms, blossom into flower after flower, year after year, mourning the dead, mourning yourself. Let your sobs be distorted, twisted, be annihilated by the tumult of sacrosanct battle. The butchers come from the east of the city, from the west of the city, from the south and north of the city. Metal helmets glint in the light. They're seeing putrid, sweltering summer. People and ghosts sing. Don't go to the east. Don't go to the west. Don't go to the south and the north. We stand in the midst of brilliance, but all people are blind. We stand on a road, but no one is able to walk. We stand in the midst of a cacophony, but all are mute. We stand in the midst of heat and thirst, but all refuse to drink. People with no understanding of the times, people in the midst of calamity, people who plot to shoot down the sun. You can only cry, you're still crying, cry, 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 cry! You've been smothered to death, baked to death, your whole body is on fire, and yet you are crying. You get up on the stage and act out a farce, you're paraded before the crowds in the streets, and yet you're crying. Your eyeballs explode, scald the surrounding crowd, and yet you're crying. You offer a bounty on yourself, find out yourself. You say you were mistaken. This cursed epoch is all wrong. And yet you're crying. You are stamped into meat pie. You cry. From meat pie, you're trampled into meat. You cry. A dog licks up the minced meat. You cry inside a dog's belly. Cry! 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 In this historically unprecedented slaughter, only the spawn of dogs can survive. In this historically unprecedented slaughter, only the spawn of dogs can survive. discuss death. Kneeling or standing, a bullet to the middle of the back or back of the head, the quality of the executioner's marksmanship, the direction our brains will splash, the instant the spirit is freed. Is there still time to look back and laugh? Will you fall head first into the pit? Will your legs stick up like flagpoles? Clattering manacles form a wave on the sticks. On the eve of execution, if a court doctor draws half your blood, you'll feel light as a feather, heart pounding like in a basketball game in space. A dog bigger than Saturn barks, attacks. What are you waiting for? Go while you're feeling good. You've said all you want to say to the world. The world should leave a will for those about to die. This fucking mute called God has a pointless tongue of time. The tongue that licks the blood clean. Only people spat out of that mouth are unmoved. But we are born of a vagina. No pain. Even the worst of us has a mother. Death is a path of white light, or an interminable tunnel. A romantic train like a penis shooting out a bullet at climax. Too much to take if it misses the vitals. Feeble like cotton, both hands become cotton. Nothing can be firmly grasped. Your last piece of shit is squeezed out toward the toilet of the sun. The anus speaks, it's still a virgin, not yet fucked by the old man upstairs.
一个新叶就是一个枪眼密布的头盖。一个新叶就是一个枪眼密布的头盖。我们在老水里讨论死亡，在永恒的日光灯下讨论死亡。站着去还是跪着去？子弹是穿过透心还是透脑？当刽子手你被刽子手击毙的那一刹那，你是否还来得及回眸一笑？当你的双腿像树干也像旗杆一样在土坑里倒数，哗啦啦的铁链淌成一条冥河的波涛。如果在枪毙前夜，法医抽出了你一半的血，你是否感到轻飘飘的舒服？心跳慢得像土星上举行的篮球比赛，比太阳更大的狗肺汪地向你袭来。死是一道白光，还是悠长的隧道？多浪漫的列车宛如阴茎，高潮时射出了一颗子弹，打不中要害，就太难受了。打不中要害，就他妈的太难受了，太难受了。打不中要害，就太难受了。死是一道白光，你栽进了土坑，你的屁眼说话了，你的最后的一个遗嘱是对着太阳的厕所挤出来的。他妈的，我还是个处男，还没被老天爷搞过。他妈的，我还是个处男，还没被老天爷搞过。
We've shared the edge of a brick bed. You hugged my legs, I embraced your shackles, until the obstinate iron grew hot against my chest. A draft angled down from the second floor. You felt cold, pulled your head back inside the blanket, as if dodging an executioner's hand, lopping off heads with a butcher's blade of wind. Did you escape it, good brother? Knives aren't used nowadays. A bullet to the back of your back. A bullet to the middle of your back. A flower bursting from your chest, the suffering left for your ma. After she hands over the fee for the bullet, the corpse is hers. Dozens of times I've imagined collecting your body in midwinter, huddled together, blood from head to foot. Who could a gentleman like you hate? Isn't this drive to slaughter dogs misplaced? In the name of the law, this is the final inn on the border of life and death. Inside, living dead reside for a year or more. Here too, transients anxious to get back on the road. Your time is neither short nor long, just like your middling height. The night you were written off, I was discomforted by the lack of iron on my chest, like a boat losing its anchor. Waves of feelings, tilting, weightless. You said, once a ghost, you'd be sure to bathe in the river and come see me clean. Was this a joke, a testament, or the most moving poem I've ever heard? The tears I've shed in dreams have drowned me a half dozen times. But when awake, my face is like a desert, not a drop to be found. Am I a political prisoner of '89? Why do I always forget my history, beliefs, and the dead of Tiananmen? Beliefs from beyond the walls, spirits beyond the heavens, seemingly older year by year. This living person before me is about to become a ghost, new ghost, old ghost, political ghost, or criminal ghost. Are you not all the same ghost? They. Hey you, dirt farmer from the hills. Have you seen tanks and rivers of blood? Me neither. I'd rather be like you. I don't want to see anything except my old lady's ass. But my heart often softens and can't control an urge to pity villains. Many times, startled by low moans of the wind, I open eyes to see beyond the window nothing but fluttering ghostly shadows heavily armed. Brother, haven't you returned after all? Isn't it true all ghosts that leave prison come back from the dead late at night?
正在一个炕头睡觉，你抱我的体链，我拥抱着你的脚，直到把那个顽铁捂得火热。穿堂风从2楼斜着砍过来。你感到凉，就往你的身体里面缩脖子，仿佛躲避风的屠刀，砍你的头。你躲得了吗？你躲得了吗？你躲得了吗？我的兄弟，你躲得了吗？明天你就要去死了，子弹从前胸打进去，从后背爆一朵花，痛苦的回忆留给你的妈妈，在她向政府缴纳子弹费之后，就可以收尸了。 你受了千百之死，千百之死。睁开眼睛，你就在我的身边。你这个邋遢鬼，3天你也不洗澡，在大热天你3天都不洗澡，你臭死人了！但是，当夜晚的风吹过来，我的心里还是会怜悯你这个坏蛋。我知道，再坏的家伙也有母亲。你这个土农民，你砍死了你的老婆，想背着一捆柴火。你这个土农民，你见过天门的血流成河？